using Zoom to allow staff and public to social distance. I'm going to put you on hold just a moment. Sorry for that delay. That's okay. We're having a little bit of echo here in our council chambers, so please stand by. As I said, we will be conducting the meeting live in person in council chambers as well as virtually on Zoom. Members of the public may view the meeting on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Pastor Bill Rath from Lincoln Christian Life Center will give the invocation this evening. And Mayor Andriotto will begin the meeting after the invocation. So Pastor, if you'd like to come up, please. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, City staff, thank you for the privilege to open this evening in prayer. So if you would bow your heads and close your eyes with me. Lord God, we just thank you for this moment of leadership. I thank you that you have endowed the 5 council members with leadership and guidance and direction to lead our city to the next moments of prosperity and success. And I thank you for that. Lord God, I thank you that you are going to be with this meeting and you're going to be in this moment. I pray for protection for all of our civil servants, for all of those who are serving us, specifically for the fire and police departments and the members of those departments as they serve us and do their best to protect us and keep us safe. I just pray for blessing and protection upon them. And again, I just pray for your spirit in this place, your presence, your peace, your wisdom, your direction. We just thank you for this day in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Bill. Ooh, that's loud. Awesome. Welcome to council. Sorry, we were walking in a couple minutes late. Yeah, we were. Yeah, thank you. All right. What?
Well, we're all thrown off a little bit. This room has changed on us, and this is the first moment we've seen it. We have a huge monitor looking right back at us here.
And I'm looking down on it too. That's weird. Okay. All right. Well, it is 6:01. So I welcome you to the February 22nd, 2022 regular meeting, City of Lincoln, City Council, Redevelopment Successor Agency, and Public Financing Authority. And item number 1, call this meeting to order. May I have a roll call, Ms. Scanlon, please?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Joyner.
Here.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen. Councilmember Silhai.
Here.
And Mayor Andriotto.
I am here. And before we get to item number 3, I just wanted to thank Pastor Bill again. I had somebody else lined up for invocation who had to switch their day. And so last minute, he's always my clutch. And so I really, really appreciate it. Okay, Ms. Mollenkoff, report from closed session.
There is no reportable action, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4, Pledge of Allegiance. I'm really excited that Anders Brown from Boy Scout Troop 435 is going to lead us in the pledge, and this is Miss Jennifer Brown's son.
Join me in reciting the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. He and I had a little Zoom meeting the other night, and I said, hey, by the way, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance at council meeting? Okay, item number 5, agenda modifications. Do we have any agenda modifications this evening from the council or from staff? No? Okay, great. Item number 6, presentations. The script says we do not have any presentations tonight, but we actually have 2, and we're very excited about this. We've been waiting a while to do this. So the first one that we're going to do is Proclamation 2022-02, honoring the 100th anniversary of Seroptimus International of Lincoln International, and declaring February 22nd as Seroptimus International of Lincoln Day. And so I'm going to ask Jerry Karate and any other members of the Seroptimus International to join me for the presentation, and we're going to come right up here. All right, come on up. Come on up, ladies. I want to thank you for your patience with the having to go back to Zoom. And then I know some people were sick and then we had delays. But I'm just so honored to, yeah, you guys can move closer to me. I promise I don't bite. Yeah, hi. I'm so honored to present you with this proclamation. I'm going to read it. And I just want to say that one of these days I'm going to get to join, but if I join one more club, my husband will shoot me. So I'm just, thank you. All right, here we go. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Lincoln honoring the 100th anniversary of Seroptimus International and declaring February 22nd as Seroptimus International of Lincoln Day. 100 years, wow, that's amazing. Whereas the Seroptimus organization, founded on October 3rd, 1921, works to economically empower women and girls through the access to education. And whereas Seroptimus International of Lincoln was formed in 2005, and whereas Seroptimus International of Lincoln has been an integral part of Lincoln's community for the past 16 years. And whereas Seroptimus International of Lincoln has improved the lives of Lincoln's women and girls through our many programs, including Live Your Dream, Dream It, Be It, Teen Esteem, Ruby Award, and the High School Scholarship Program by dispersing approximately 30 Seroptimus Live Your Dreams Awards to local women to help get them the education and training they need to improve their employment prospects and economic standing. Holding 3 Seroptimus Dream It, Be It events that have put 100 local girls on the path toward achieving their career goals. Holding nearly 10 special all-day sessions in honor of high school teens to help them recognize their worth and to build their self-esteem and give them tools to overcome life's challenges. Giving recognition to women in our community who make extraordinary differences in the lives of women and girls. Working to bring awareness to our community regarding sex trafficking, and granting over $100,000 to graduating high school seniors so they can pursue their dreams of higher education and a bright career. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Lincoln hereby proclaims February 22nd, 2022, Seroptimus International Lincoln Day throughout Lincoln, California, and encourage extending congratulations to Seroptimus for its 100th anniversary and to celebrate the Seroptimus International of Lincoln Club for their many contributions to our community. As a woman, thank you very much.
Get in together. Have them move over because the light is in their eyes. Yeah. Yeah, to the right, or I guess your left. There you go. Because the projection is on 2 of their faces. Yeah. You should get a better one with them.
Oh, that's okay.
It was all over their faces,
Okay.
the tall ladies. They probably would have traced, yeah.
Okay. We're gonna do one more.
Because there were. There you go. That's much better. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine.
Yes, yes, that's so great.
As a sign, yeah, slacking already, Sean.
Okay, and our second proclamation, item 6B, it's Proclamation 2022-03, recognizing the Lincoln Hills Foundation for their contributions to the community. So will Peter Gilbert and Denise Bowden join me for the presentation?
Yeah.
Oh, anybody else? Anybody else? That was just on my, yes, come on up, please. Anybody? I know, right? Yes, no, I appreciate all of you being here. Those were the only names on my script, so excited for you guys to be here. Come on up. Say Seroptimus like 5 times. That was hard. Yeah. All right, here we go. Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Lincoln recognizing the Lincoln Hills Foundation for their contributions to the community. Whereas the activities of the Lincoln Hills Foundation have served all residents of the City of Lincoln, even though their primary focus is on seniors. And whereas at the beginning of 2022, the Lincoln Hills Foundation made a special grant to the salt mine in the amount of $50,000 to pay the balance of the loan for a truck they were required to buy to meet new state regulations, which allow them to continue providing food assistance to those in need in the City of Lincoln. And whereas in 2021, the Lincoln Hills Foundation gave 2 grants to the police department. The first grant funded Project Lifesaver wristbands intended to be worn by individuals with cognitive issues who have the potential to wander or get lost, giving law enforcement valuable time and resources to reconnect loved ones by tracking and locating these lost individuals. The second grant was to outfit 5 more City of Lincoln squad cars with automatic defibrillators, improving the chances of survival for those in cardiac arrest. Whereas the Lincoln Hills Foundation is made up of 100% volunteers from Sun City, Lincoln Hills, who support not only that community, but all of the City of Lincoln seniors, and 100% of donations received go back into providing grants. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Lincoln hereby recognizes and express their appreciation of the Lincoln Hills Foundation for their contributions to the community. Congratulations, and thank you very, very much.
And if you can, Peter, student, so your head's on in the.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Peter.
So Madam Mayor, I think to make those official, we need a motion and a second on both of those proclamations, and I will make that motion.
Happy to second.
Awesome. Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. All right. Thank you for that very much. That's super fun part of the job. I know the grants to the police department are super important, but the grant for the truck for salt mine is incredibly helpful because we go out there and do the turkey drive every year, and they use it all year round. But Pastor Eric was telling me that their truck wouldn't pass smog anymore, and so they were going to be stuck without a truck. So you guys need to know how big that was. So thank you very, very much for that. Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
You didn't want to stay for the entire meeting? All right.
All right, item number 7, public comment. Ms. Scanlon, do we have any public comment on Zoom? Any hands raised?
No hands are raised,
Okay,
Mayor.
how about in the council chambers here? Okay, Mr. Chapman?
Byron Chapman on 12 Bridges. Thank you, Mayor, council members, and city staff. I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome our new city manager here. It's nice to put that live face, even though we had you on a picture, the live face to us. I think it's going to be a welcome change for us. We've been rotating that position, and we stopped that rotation, so I just wanted to let you know. Welcome to the city of Lincoln. That's the good news. My other is a constant reminder on our half a block down the street, sidewalks not blocked off. Now they put a nice sign up there that says not only is it closed, but it's also a work area. I think that's somewhat redundant, but that's the way that is. It too is one of those things, the city doesn't have to find the funds at this point in time. The city has been doing other things for the ADA that's required. However, it is also set up to where those in wheelchairs, mobility issues cannot go through that area. If the public is to go through an area on a sidewalk, it should be open to everyone, and it is not. I've been playing with this now on 9 months. That's probably about 8 months and 29 days longer than it should have taken. So for what it's worth, close the street, the sidewalk off, period. I realize the constraints and the money and that sort of thing. That's not an excuse for the city not to look at that and go, I've heard the comment that, oh, well, there's areas off to the side that's private property. I'll be happy to meet anyone, city manager, ADA coordinator, mayor, everyone. It's going to take me 5 minutes to show you exactly how to mark it off, and there's no violations, and the problem is solved until the city can fix it. It's that simple. How something that simple could roll into a 9-month nightmare. And for those of you who don't own or operate in a wheelchair, it's not a nightmare for you. It is a nightmare for people. I have a power chair, but for those who have manual chairs, it's an absolute nightmare. You need to come up to the times. You need to understand what it is. And the ADA, as another reminder from Byron Chapman, is that it's been in effect since 31 years and counting. I think that's way too long, way too long. And I think the issue that needs to be addressed is like yesterday. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman, for that reminder. And Mr. Chapman reminded me that before the meeting started, or when the meeting started, I wanted to welcome City Manager Sean Scully to his first in-person meeting. It's not his first council meeting. We were on Zoom last week, but this is your first in-person. And so it's really great to be here with you. And I was wondering, do you happen to know off the top of your head when that sidewalk corner is going to be addressed?
Oh, that's how it works. I don't, but I'm gonna call Mr. Chapman and I'll get with you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, any other public comment? No? Okay, thank you. All right, item number 8 is our consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or resident requests a specific item be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any item removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any of my colleagues wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? And do you have one that you want to?
I do, Madam Mayor.
recuse yourself?
At item 8N.
Yeah, I was anticipating that.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, any other items to be pulled? Any items from the public? Mr. Chapman? Okay,
No hands are raised on Zoom.
thank you very much. Okay, so for the remainder of the consent agenda, may I have a motion?
Motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
And Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Thank you. All right, so let's do 8L first. That way we can get that done and then you can step out for the other one. So item 8L, adopt successor agency resolution 2022-02, authorizing the finance director to write off a loan being carried off the city's books related to Buonarroti Ristorante Incorporated, located at 460 Lincoln Boulevard, because it was discharged in May 2012 by a bankruptcy court and should have been written off at that time. Mr. Chapman, do you have a simple question for that, or would you like a report first?
Maybe I can explain what this
Okay.
is and cut right to the chase. Looking at the packet and doing some investigative work, this $100,000 indeed is being written off. However, my concern is how does the city avoid this kind of scenario? The party that was in there was personal note, lien, that sort of thing. I know you can't go back and say what was and what will be, but as I went through this thing, just looking back in that point in time, there were enough safeguards in there that the party should have been dealt with. Unfortunately, from what I read and what I looked at, it wasn't. It was basically their personal note was like nobody needed to sign it because it wasn't a big deal and the court let it go. So I'm wondering, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. And as I read this too, it also just brought it out to me that how this person even made that kind of an arrangement, I don't know, but it was very, very weak. Didn't have a whole lot of teeth to it. And obviously the city has to write that off. And in doing so, I want the people and you, the council, to understand that that's not just $1,000 that you write off. That's $1,000 that could have gone somewhere else in the city. It's something that should have and could have happened, but it didn't. And that was a huge opportunity to make sure that we have the necessary funds to do the things that we need to do. And writing off $100,000, that's a pretty big deal, particularly when you had all the information in the notes and all the other things that went with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Mollenkopf, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. Sure. I'm happy to address some of the comments. Specifically, it's important to realize that this is redevelopment agency money. This is money that was set up for the very specific purpose of supporting businesses and rehabilitating historic properties. And that is the intended purpose for which this money was utilized. With respect to safeguards or why things didn't happen when they should have happened, I can't speak to that. I wasn't here in 2012. I will say that Daniel Alcantara provided me with documentation that clearly established his corporation is an S corporation, which is a pass-through, which means that it was simply staff error back in 2012 when the city received the notice of discharge of bankruptcy that his personal loan was written off, but the corporate loan was not. And so this is simply an effort in us going through the books and trying to clean up some of the last remaining vestiges of the redevelopment agency in order to get it right and be able to move forward. These are not funds that come out of the general fund or would have been available for police or fire or anything like that.
That was a clarifying question I was going to ask. It's not money that should have come to the city that we could have done whatever. It's completely separate. Yes.
And when you say the last vestiges of redevelopment, the governor eliminated redevelopment agencies in 2014.
It was 20, it was earlier than that. It was, I believe it was 2010 or 2011.
It was just in litigation for several years after that. And when I say resolving the last vestiges, it is that we have a couple of tax credit apartment unit buildings that we're kind of trying to come to terms with the owners and a few things like that you'll be hearing that will be coming before you in the next several months.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comment on this item?
None on Zoom, Mayor, and I
Okay.
don't see any
All right,
hands.
thank you. All right, then if there's no more comment or question on council, may I have a motion to approve item 8L?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. Okay, so item 8N, adopt resolution 2022-44, authorizing the city manager to accept the open space parcel in fee for the Joyner East and Joyner West projects pursuant to Parkland Credit Agreement approved by the city of Lincoln by resolution 2021-117 on June 22nd, 2021. And so
And Madam Mayor, as you alluded to, I'm going to be recusing myself on this item as it involves property that belongs to my family.
okay, we will let you know when we're done with this. Thank you.
And I-
Yeah. So I don't know if there's actually, if there's actually any questions or comments that anybody has on this, since it was pulled. Do the council have any questions or comments or need clarification? Are there any comments from the public?
None on Zoom.
Okay, then may I have a motion to
I
approve?
move
item-
we approve item 8 in the agenda.
I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Carlskent,
Yeah.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. And as city attorney goes and retrieves Councilmember Joyner. Item number 9, public hearing. We do not have any public hearing tonight. So we move on to item number 10, general business. And item 10A is to receive the library COVID-19 response status report and provide direction regarding the reinstatement of in-person library programs. And our library director, Catherine Hunt, will give the staff report. And I just want to say it's really great to see you in person and to have you here tonight. So
All right. Am I audible from here?
yep, you're good.
Yes, we're good. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Mayor, council members, for having me today. I am Catherine Hunt, your Director of Library Services. And how do I move this to be visible? Okay, perfect. So I'm here tonight in response to a request that came from your January 11th meeting, I believe, for a update on the library's response to COVID-19, particularly in terms of bringing back in-person programming. So very briefly on a summary of what we've been doing over the past 2 years with the library, going back to 2020 in March, we, like many other agencies, did close in response to any number of orders, emergency declarations that I will not enumerate at this point. We have all been there. This was a full closure of the library, including sending staff to work from home. At that point, just a few weeks later in April, we did start bringing our events online and offering those. In May, we brought staff back in the building, began to provide curbside services, so making the collection available to the public, even though they weren't able to come into the building for health and safety reasons. In October, we were able to then reopen with modifications to the public, and those modifications were dictated by the state public health office. Oh, it seemed to be moving. One moment while we get the slideshow to catch up.
So bear with us. This is new tech, the first time we're using it in a live meeting. I do want to say the audio is so much better.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
much
you.
appreciated.
Gwen and staff get a gold star. Yeah. There you go.
We got it. On 2 screens.
On this one.
Okay, so we're good. Okay, fantastic. So October 2020, we did reopen with modifications. We did stay open through the winter and that winter spike. When we got to 2021, we saw some changes in April. We no longer had to quarantine our materials. We started moderating our modifications. And then in June, with the change in the state health order, most of our social distancing and masking modifications for accessing the library were removed. In October, we actually did start bringing back limited in-person events. This was, if any of you took part in our Harry Potter versus Star Wars Day, as well as we did bring back our family story time, our conversation club, and our Read to a Dog program. December, we started to see the beginning of the Omicron peak. Universal indoor masking was reinstated by the California Department of Public Health. And in January of this year, as we really saw that Omicron surge, we did suspend our in-person programming again, those pieces we had begun. February, we're now at the end of this month, we have seen the universal indoor masking order expire. Cases are going down. And so I'm now here presenting and talking kind of about what the library is looking in terms of in-person programming and events going forward. And with that, to get started, throughout the pandemic, throughout COVID-19, our goal as a department is to offer events and services that meet the needs of our community in meaningful, sustainable, and safe ways. So we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community, but in a way that prioritizes what the community needs most, in a way that with our capacity and our limitations, whether those are coming from the public health orders anything like that, we can continue to offer in a meaningful way and that are safe for our staff, for our volunteers, and for the public who come in and take part. So with that, we have done a lot of online events over the last 2 years. And before we talk about in-person events, I want to take a moment to talk about what we've learned from those events. And one is that there are real benefits from us being able to offer events online. One is recordings. People who cannot make the scheduled times are able to take part and benefit from recorded events. And it's very easy to record a Zoom event as opposed to an in-person event. We can expand our range of presenters. This upcoming Thursday, we're going to have an author who we would never be able to bring physically into the library because she does not live in the greater Sacramento area, but it's very easy for us to join on Zoom and expand those offerings. We do know we have some people who took part in things like our book clubs before COVID in person, take part in them after on Zoom, much prefer the Zoom format to the in-person. It's just more convenient for certain programs for certain people. We also know with online events, there is really no transmission risk for COVID for those members of our community who that risk is still very forefront in their minds. And finally, for online events, for some people, depending on the assistive technology that they rely on to fully participate, those online events can be much, much more accessible. Of course, for some people, those online events are less accessible, but it does let us reach a portion of the community that our online or our in-person events weren't reaching as successfully. Now, there are limitations for all of this. Screen fatigue. Not many people are jumping for joy to jump on another Zoom call at this point. There's also community limitations. It is hard to build community in a Zoom room. It is very different from coming into a library, and libraries are invested in as third places for our community to come together, to meet each other, to take part in resources. That doesn't happen the same way in Zoom. Certain events don't do well online. Anyone who's been to our toddler story time that has been on hiatus now for 2 years knows that it's really hard to have the experience of a small child clapping their name out on a drum when the drum is on Zoom. It's not the same. And then finally, staff and internal capacity. Some online programs really reduce the staff time investment. Many of them, we found this with our online homework center that we really pushed to have when all learning was online because we knew students really needed support. Took probably 4 to 5 times as much staff time to manage when they moved online as when they did in person because our ability to rely on volunteers is very, very different in the online realm. So with that, in summary, there are great things in online. We learned a lot, but we definitely think that it's a tool in our catalog of library programs, and we want to bring our in-person programming back. So our considerations with that, and these have been true for the past 2 years, are a number of things. First and foremost, of course, our guidance from public health, which right now are very positive toward bringing programs and events back. Things that mitigate the risk of transmission or severe disease. So vaccinations are now widely available for people over the age of 5 who are interested in partaking of them. High quality masks are available in a way that they were not in earlier parts of the pandemic. Of course, our local case rate, which right now is declining. And then, of course, we still have, even with the declining case rate, the concern of transmission, not just for the people who participate in our event, but the impact that that has throughout our community. What are our hospitalization rates looking like? When schools were at risk of having closures, if classrooms had a certain number of cases, was running a program to bring a bunch of school-age children together and possibly sharing their germs, benefiting the goal of keeping students in school. And then finally, many of our programs are dependent on volunteer support. Many of our volunteers are in high-risk groups, so that capacity is limited even now compared to what it was before the pandemic. So the kind of proposed direction from within the library, from within the department, as we look forward, as we look on how do we bring in programs and continue to adapt through this next stage of the pandemic, is one, to maintain our online events as appropriate and beneficial. Where they're working well, where they are expanding the value of the library, to keep doing them, that there's no reason to get rid of online just for the sake of getting rid of it. Then to assess our in-person events, the whole portfolio of them that we had pre-COVID in terms of risk and value. And I'll talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but the idea that there are certain formats and factors that make it a higher risk event for the people who partake in them. Conversely, there are pieces and programs that have such high value in person, and we want to emphasize where we can get kind of the most bang for our buck. What is our highest value, lowest risk, and start there and then move on. With that, talking about phasing in those higher value, lower risk events, really looking at March, given the current numbers. And that would be looking at events that we did bring back in October and November of last year. And then to have an emphasis on phasing in those programs, but to set the pace of phasing in those programs really based on those assessments, on what the current COVID conditions are doing, best practices from other libraries. If another library finds a great way to mitigate a risk that we're concerned about, that will accelerate our ability to bring a program back. And things like operational demands. Where are our volunteers' comfort level? What does our volunteer core look like? And use those factors to bring in these events as we're able to. And so with that assessment, these are just some of the questions that we ask ourselves when we're looking at them. Things like audience. Is our audience at a high risk or is our audience at a lower risk? The format, long events with lots of different households and like Mother Goose on the Loose, where there's props that might get shared directly between kids. Higher risk formats, shorter duration, smaller households are lower risk formats, and what modifications can we do to manage those? Value, can the program only happen in person or can we do pretty much just as great a job online? And then finally, internal capacity. And a lot of this is that volunteer support or what are those impacts in terms of managing something online versus in person. So with that, that is some of the things that the library as a department's been looking at with bringing in person. And I am happy to answer any questions and to have any direction from the council.
Thank you so much. You are always so thorough and you cover everything. And I always enjoy hearing all your reports because you're so detailed and so thorough. So thank you for that. All right, does the council have questions or comments?
Your coffee with the authors, your meeting with the authors, I assume will continue to be Zoom since it really works in that format.
Yes, at this point, that's something that we would look at to keep doing Zoom, probably long term when we're looking endemic. We'd probably still do in person with local authors, but to continue to have Zoom as one of the formats that we offer that in. Absolutely.
Catherine, I'll just echo the mayor. You are so thorough and thoughtful in all of this. It leaves us with no reason to question what you've put forward. You've done very well. And I think you've covered the appropriate way to approach this, to adjust as things adjust on us. And so I'll just commend you for the work you've done on this and say, go forth and do what you think best and check back in with us if something shifts dramatically that we need to know about.
Yeah, I'd only chime in ditto. I mean, you're so articulate and I don't have to ask questions because you ask yourself them and then you answer them. So that's out of the way. But I would like to emphasize particularly, and probably because my kids are still young and I used the library, the early childhood education component at our library has always been something that has been really important to our community. And just acknowledging how expensive childcare is and how expensive preschool programming is and TK. There are a lot of families who relied on all of those enrichment opportunities because they were free. And so I agree with you on that question, how long, how many households? But if that's going to be the restriction, I would love for us to be able to get creative and maybe offer more sessions, right? So instead of an hour twice a day, maybe it's, 20 minutes and there's 4 of them or something so that more people can cycle through so that we can continue to offer those opportunities for maybe those who can't afford to have those enriching experiences. That'd be my only hope. I don't know if it's possible, but.
Absolutely. And that's definitely something that we can bring back and workshop through.
Awesome. Councilmember Lordson?
Yeah, I went a third, and that's not only second, but third, but the comments made by my colleagues here. Also, you've done I think you've done a great job as far as, and I think most librarians have done a great job transitioning from, the in-person library services to these new, how would you call them, electronic devices and everything else. And, I know the library business is changing and you seem to have done a great job in transitioning to that change. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you all.
One more thing?
Yes, one more thing. Outside of what you've brought to us tonight, I'm curious how the transition to bringing the high school in is working out.
Overall, I think it's going fantastically. It's been really, really great. I have to say, speaking of programs with this, one of the things that has been really exciting, we have implemented under the guidance of one of my phenomenal staff members, Tony Jenkins, a teen advisory board. So we have 12 incredibly passionate teenagers from high schools all over Lincoln, Lincoln High, 12 Bridges, Western Sierra, and they are helping us build our programs, and they're really stepping in as leaders and making sure that the voices of their generation are heard and working with us. So that's been one of the most exciting things coming out of this immediate period, is getting to build that relationship. And I think it's going to bode very well for the value of the library to teens and high schoolers, both at 12 Bridges and beyond in the years to come.
Good. I think that's great.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you very
Exciting.
much.
It is. So how has this transition shifted the way you do business?
It's louder at 11 o'clock. If you want a silent library, like you might remember, I highly recommend 9 to 11. And at 11 o'clock, expect a little bit more noise. We're seeing more use of the library as a study space. It's been very interesting, both from 12 Bridges High School students. We've also seen the use by Whitney students really increase. So you get a couple teens in and you become cool. So we're working on that. We've had a really great chance integrating. We do have a district employee who spends time at the library, works as a library tech. We've done some great outreach out on the campus. And then just we're building those relationships with teachers to make sure that we're supporting that curriculum. So we had all the English classes come in the last month so that every student could pick up a free reading novel out of the library collection and learn how to use the library. So just opportunities like that. It's a little bit more planning in time to make sure that we're available when we have suddenly 35 kids who all want to check out from the teen space, but it's fantastic. And it's definitely something we can handle. We're just keeping our eye on it and making sure we have the resources available at those times.
Speaking of which, do you see the need to shift the collection as a result of your new customers?
At this point, we're not necessarily seeing too much. We did always purchase pretty robustly in young adults. We try very hard to stay up on what is most current and interesting. We probably are going to flesh out some of our classics. It's going to be very interesting next year when the research projects come in. We're probably going to see some shifts in terms of our nonfiction collection, but that's a junior year project. So we'll have a better sense of that when those start next year.
Thank you.
I watched you the last few years prepare for the opening of the high school, and just as a educator myself, I really appreciate how you have embraced that relationship and the work that you are doing and what you just described of fostering the relationship between the library and the school district. And this teen council thing is amazing. So that I really, really appreciate that. And I think moving forward, this is a great endeavor. I think it's awesome. And I'm just very excited about it.
On that,
yeah.
the mayor and I have served on the library board for several years now, and I would just like to commend you for exactly what you said, the way that you methodically have approached all of this huge transition and done it with such grace and thoughtfulness. And I think that the evidence of all of that planning is that there have been surprisingly few hiccups. And I have not heard anyone who's just like angry about how it's happening, right? It's working really well, and that doesn't happen on accident. So thank you.
I am proud to say we run a comment box in the lobby of the library, and we have up to now, knock on wood, 0 complaints about the high schoolers
Awesome.
with the
surprised.
anonymous comment box. So
Yeah, that's a credit to you and your staff.
This idea of the English teachers bringing the kids over from high school to learn to use the library. And that sounds like it's been a success. Have the school district thought about moving that down to the junior high level? Or, well,
we have not had conversations about the junior high level. There's actually a project in the works that has been a little bit suspended, but is still on the books with COVID, in which we did our Friends of the Library group wanted to help us fund busing to bring over elementary school kids for exactly that reason.
That
To
would
start
be
building those associations.
even better.
Yeah.
You know, learning how to use library when you're already in high school is not palatable.
Well, and in this day and age of, every kid has their face in their phone or their iPad, the more we can get them in the library reading, at a young age, I'm all for that. I think that's great. Do we have any comments from the public on this?
So Mayor, I don't have any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, anybody in the gallery? No? Okay, well, are we just receiving information? We don't have to do a motion, right? That's right.
Gave direction.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your effort and all this, and looking forward as you begin to slowly bring back things. Eventually, we'll get there to full programming again.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Love it. All right. Item 10B, review the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 mid-year budget amendment and adopt resolution 2022-45, amending the adopted fiscal year 2021-22 budget. And is Ruth Ann going to do this, or is?
She is, but before I set Ruth Ann loose, I wanted to just mention a few things, sort of high level. Typically, the way I like to do this is just sort of give you a couple of highlights, and then Ruth Ann will get slightly more granular so you can see the detail. But I just wanted to mention a couple things. First off, if I had a menu of items that I'd like to have my first report before this council be, the mid-year budget review would be very low on the menu. I mean, it's super important, but also I didn't get nearly as much time as I normally would to go through it. But that said, Ruth Ann did an excellent job prepping all of this, and I think you'll see in her presentation that she really hits the most important components. Big picture though, I'll just simply note that revenues look very strong. In our opinion, a little unusually strong given some of the other kind of national media information that you may have heard over the past month or so. Usually it's very common in municipal budgets to see sort of a softening in the first quarter because everybody spends all their money in the fourth. But our sales tax consultants generally don't see it that way. And usually more times than not, they're correct. So you'll see a fairly significant $1.5 million amendment to revenue projections. And in general, I was also very pleased to see that the requests for expenditure increases are relatively minor. That it accounts for only about 1.5% variation from original budgeted figures, which is pretty good. And then the best news, which Ruth Ann will go on into in more detail, is that because we are expecting an increase in revenues, you will take your estimated 1.1 million that was going to come from unrestricted reserves to balance, and that number drops to $94,260. So it's not quite balanced, but darn close in a $23 million general fund. Which, by the way, if you care, it counts to less than 1% of your existing reserves. You'll also notice as she goes through her report that we have a significant increase, I mean, significant, over $20 million in some of our special revenue funds, primarily related to development that I think even the projections at the beginning of the year have proved to hopscotch those times quite a few numbers there. So you'll see a lot of those revenues fall into very restricted accounts, mostly PFE. But as you know, PFE type and CIP projects are very expensive. So that money tends to get spent very quickly when you finally move forward. So all in all, from a budgetary perspective, in my experience, a pretty good mid-year. And we hope to build on it with sort of a more holistic discussion about the budget in the coming months. So I'm going to pass it over to Ruth Ann, and hopefully, Ruth Ann, I didn't steal all your thunder.
No, you made it sound really good. I appreciate that. So thanks, Sean. And hopefully I will do as good a job as Catherine did. Looks like the screen is melting from what I'm seeing. Oh, there it's back. Okay.
And there it goes again.
I don't know if I should share my screen. Let me give that a try, see what
Oh, and
happens.
it's happening again. I've never seen that happen.
All right,
There
so
we go.
hopefully you can see my screen. And so the purpose of this presentation is to provide you with an overview, like Sean said, of the mid-year amendment to the adopted 2021-22 budget. That budget was originally adopted by council on May 25th, 2021. And as we all know, there was, some unknown times then as well. So there are some things that, as Sean stated, some construction items, et cetera, which were understated because we were trying to still be a bit conservative. And so over the past 7 months, we've reviewed the revenues that we've received and the funds that we have expended. And as a result, there are 5 reports that were part of your council packet. And those will outline, give you an overview of how the mid-year changes will impact the adopted budgets in various funds. So of course, we always like to start off talking about the general fund. So the original budget had inflows of 22 million with 24.1 million in expenses. And I will say that approximately 1 million of that 24 million was a transfer to operating reserves. So we did do that. And then through January, the city has received about 58% of the budgeted revenue in the general fund, about 12.7 million. And we have an expenses of about 13.5 million. So we're pretty much on track for what we had anticipated at this point. And then also we do show, however, while looking at revenues and projecting revenues out based on what we have received to date, we do show that we are trending higher than we had projected. And a lot of it has to do with a higher sales tax projection that we received from HDL in their last quarterly meeting, along with the continued strong construction activity. So this slide basically shows you how the changes that have already been approved by council through January, which are in that column B, plus the proposed mid-year changes, which are in the second to the last column, how that will impact the general fund toward the end of the year. Basically, the changes prior to January were, for the most part, changes related to MOU agreements that went before council prior to January. And as Sean said, there is still a somewhat of a expenses exceeding revenues, but you have to look in that as well. That does include the $1 million that is being transferred to the operating reserve, so that it is only about a $94,000 that we're digging into unreserved fund balances. So if you look, there's basically 3 types of revenues that comprise about 75% of the inflows that the general fund receives: property taxes, sales taxes, and property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees. And in January of 2022, the city received our first installment of a property tax, which was about $6.4 million. And as you're probably aware, but I'll say it anyway, the city is on a teeter program related to their property taxes, which means we get 100% of our apportionment and the county owns any delinquent receivables. So our payment in January is essentially 55% of what we will receive. We get an additional 40% in May, and then the final 5% in June. And also our sales tax revenues through January were about 2.3 million of our budgeted 4.7 million. So this slide shows the 5 different categories that are proposed to be adjusted in this mid-year budget, and it does total about $1.5 million. And then you can see those are the 5 categories and the types of revenue, or how those revenues are received, where they're derived from. And then the following slides that I have, I will show you a little bit more detail in each category what we are proposing. So in property tax, it's actually just a net increase of about 120,000. We have about a $400,000 increase to the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees, but there is an offsetting reduction of about 280,000, which is correcting an allocation which should have been posted to the former redevelopment agency. So that's going to need to be transferred from the general fund to the former redevelopment agency fund. And then in the sales tax revenue category, that's an increase of about 690,000. The receipts are slightly higher. We received these projections, like I said, from HDL. And pretty much what's happening now is the increase is being driven by higher gas prices, and overall sales across all the categories for Lincoln have actually been fairly strong. The next category that we have an increase in is in the licenses and permits, and that's about $230,000. And again, basically related to new construction continuing to hold strong. Within the service charges revenue category, there's about $450,000 of increases. $80,000 of that we will be receiving from the U.S. Department of Forestry for our fire mutual aid reimbursements. And we get those, unfortunately, every year, but we do not budget for them at the beginning of the year. So we wait to see what comes in mid-year is usually when we know what we will be getting. There's also, again, an additional $220,000 associated with building permit service charges. And we also recently had a contract with Western Placer Unified for a school resource officer, and that went before council and was approved, but at the time, an augmentation to the revenues was not done. So that's kind of a cleanup of that. And then under our other fund revenue category, we also had a $2,500 Friends of the Lincoln Library contribution to the library. And we also have about $30,000 worth of unclaimed check revenue, which we can record. The city holds on to unclaimed checks, return checks for about 3 years. And after that period of time, we can record that. So we will be doing that. Then if we flip over to the general fund expenditure side, there is approximately $374,000 of total expenditures, which we are proposing to increase the budget by. And those are broken up by department. So for the fire department, there is a $49,000 increase for strike team mutual aid overtime, which is offset by the revenue that was shown on a previous slide. And there is also a $12,000 request for a traffic light controller at the intersection of McBean and East Avenue outside of Fire Station 33. For the police department, there's about $40,000 to cover a new dispatch console and increase communication costs. We are actually moving to a new communication provider. So we do have some duplicative, that was a tough word to say, duplicative costs for communications because we're trying to make sure that we aren't cutting off lines that we still need, et cetera. So some of those costs may go away, but we are planning for it for the time being. Across other departments within the general fund, there are several different increases, including in the city attorney's department, there's an increase for some code enforcement software. There's a rather large increase in the city council's budget for redistricting and upgrade of the audiovisual system. And there's within human resources, there's $18,000 for contract negotiation legal assistance. There is a $69,000 cost because, as probably most people are aware, increased costs for materials and professional services and supplies, and that's really hitting our fleet and facilities budgets within the general fund. And we also have an $87,000 increase to our property and liability insurance costs. And finally, there is a decrease of about $38,000 to true up to actual revenues that we transferred from the general fund to Fund 101. And it was revenue that was received in 2021. And so we're truing that up in this fiscal year. This slide just basically shows you that here's our audited beginning fund balance, which when the budget is prepared each year, we're using a projected beginning fund balance. So we now have the audited beginning fund balance. and then including all the changes that we have made so far and the proposed changes for the mid-year, we are showing a projected ending fund balance of $9.6 million. And there is also a 28% operating reserve, which is approximately $6 million. So in summary, the budget included the use of about $2.3 million in unreserved fund balance, which also included that $1 million to operating reserve. Now with all of our new changes that we are proposing, it's about a $94,000 use of unreserved funds. And after the proposed adjustments, we are looking at an unreserved balance projected to be of $9.6 million in the general fund. And we do, of course, have other funds besides the general fund, and they're broken up into categories of special revenue funds and also proprietary type funds, which are like our internal service fund, our overhead fund, and our enterprise funds, water, wastewater, solid waste, transit, and airport. Here's where Sean mentioned that we do have quite a bit of revenue increase. $20 million increase to special revenue funds, and there is a $2.5 million increase to the various proprietary funds. So if you look at within the special revenue funds, there's an increase of about $20 million. $10 million of that is accounted for because of higher than anticipated permits. So much of that is to PFE funds. There is also $1.6 million for transportation related funding. There was a larger allocation from TDA funding, Transportation Development Act funding. And there was also $6.4 million in federal grant reimbursements. Earlier in the year, we had rolled over construction projects from prior fiscal years. And at that time, the revenue should have been rolled over as well, but they were not. So those $6.4 million basically covers the federal expenditures that we had rolled over previously. And in our proprietary fund revenues, there's a increase of about $2.5 million. $1.5 million is related to construction permit revenues in Fund 715, 725, and 735. And those funds are the water non-operations, wastewater non-operations, and the solid waste non-operations. There is also a $245,000 increase to the transit fund because we have to true up the claim from the prior year. It's kind of an ongoing rolling thing that you true up to actual. So that is where what that $245,000 is for. And then there is also a $390,000 increase for federal aviation grant reimbursements, which is the same situation as the 6.4 noted above. Construction projects were rolled over. The revenue needs to be rolled over as well. We do have across multiple funds, we have increases and decreases across the funds, which result in a net decrease of overall expenditures of a little bit over $1 million. Primarily, those decreases are related to construction projects, which have been completed, and we can close those out and unencumber the funds and roll those funds back into their fund balances. And you can see there are a few projects on here and they're hitting various different funds. Some other increases we have is basically for cost of cost of materials and supplies within several divisions across multiple funds. There's also several security enhancements that the IT division is making. They're doing some cybersecurity, some ransomware threat detection, and installing some additional card keys here at City Hall. There is also an increased need for some inspection and plan check staff report within the Development Services Division, and that is within Fund 248. And there is some increased anticipated water consumption within Fund 710. And there was a very detailed listing of all the increases and decreases which impact each fund, and that was attached in the staff report submittal. So in summary, this is just a quick summary. It shows that our revenue in the general fund is going to increase about 1.5 million. Our expenditures will also be increasing about 374,000. And there will be a minimal use of the general fund unreserved fund balance, and we will have a projected year-end balance of $9.6 million. And again, in the special revenue funds, and this is across multiple funds, there's a revenue increase of $20 million with an expenditure increase of 345,000. And in our internal service funds, there's an expense increase of about $172,000. And then the proprietary funds, there's a revenue increase of about 2.9 and an expense decrease of about 1.6. And that, in a nutshell, is the mid-year.
Mayor, if I could just add one more thing. A question was asked this week about Fund 101, which is the account that the new tax sharing arrangement goes into. And the question was specifically to verify that the revenue that's represented in that account isn't the total amount of the property taxes, it only is represented as the extra amount that we get under this temporary arrangement. And I did verify that with Ruth Ann, that actually when the county sends us that revenue, they send it completely separate of how we receive our normal property tax. So that $1.5 million balance that you see on your sheet is accurate.
Is it increment only?
Correct, correct.
Ruth Ann, thank you for that. That was,
You're welcome.
again, very thorough, and I appreciate all the work that you do. Comments and questions from the council? Mayor Pro Tem Joyner.
Only that's all very good news, some of the best I've seen in at least the last decade.
Right. Very good. Councilmember Carlson?
No, it's good news. It'll be better news when we do the budget. And I was particularly happy to find out that 101 is tracking what it should be tracking. So great job, Ruth Ann.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth Ann. That was an excellent report. How likely is it that this is going to continue into the next fiscal year? You know, the good news. Can you project? Can you project?
Put on your turban and start predicting.
Well, if I knew that, I'd get a lottery ticket.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, revenue and, likely to.
I mean, we do have the, we have new houses coming on all the time, although there are associated expenses with that. We do have those houses coming on. We do have some CFD monies coming in. So there are definitely some positives.
And I think if we continue to really seize this time where you have this very hot market, and by that I mean particularly with being aggressive on commercial development, really more than anything else, you can sort of, I hate overusing this term, but mitigate the impact of when things do cool down. Most of the things that I read and see, at least in the public finance world, seems to indicate that there doesn't seem to be a sentiment that there's going to be an 09 level event, but certainly a softening and slowing correction. But the way, based on my review of the numbers, the good news is that through a variety of reasons, Lincoln has put itself in a position to be fairly financially secure, even if you have one of those dips, especially with the unrestricted reserve level at that amount.
I don't know that I have questions, but I personally found this format maybe the most digestible that we've had to date in terms of like the mid-year, just giving us the quick and dirty facts and figures for both council consumption and public consumption. It was very easy to track and follow, and I appreciated that because I know that it's hard to make it that easy to track and digestible. So thank you for your hard work because I got a lot out of that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
In particular, the comments on each line item.
Correct.
And the detail,
Yeah.
I know saved her 300 phone calls
Yes.
and it's. but
It
useful.
also saved Sean a lot of questions for me because I feel like it's self-explanatory.
Very good format.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Okay, anybody in the
Let's-
council?
There is a treasurer raised.
And then we'll go to Mr. Chapman. Go ahead, Richard.
Richard Burrows, Sun City. First, I'm your elected city treasurer. I've sat through many of these presentations before, and I echo the fact that this is an outstanding, the best mid-year report that we've had on so many levels. The first level is we're doing really well. All of us we lived through the debacle of the Great Recession, understand the difference between where we are then, where we are now. There's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of challenges that we have staring at us going into the future, obviously. But obviously, things are clicking very, very well in Lincoln, so this is good. And as the treasurer with a love of numbers, we've got the audit report. Now we've got the mid-year correction over here. Tomorrow, just for the community, we will be having a special meeting of the Fiscal and Investment Oversight Committee. We'll be looking at the external audit, which the council has already received. We'll take a look at that. We may get into this a little bit, maybe that or in the future, but this is certainly, it's comforting to see this where we are at this point. It gives us a great lever for going forward. I also would just like to say and compliment Ruth Ann for the back end of the report. There's 25 pages here. I think basically half of them are the explanation on a line by line basis. And I'm just urging the community to download their staff report and see what's in there, because that gives you an idea of where the changes are. There are some major changes, both positive and negative. Fortunately, more positive than negative, but they're all explained in here. So with and the whole city staff, thank you.
Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. I too, it's somewhat of a novice in trying to keep up with the budget. This format is by far heads and shoulders about everything else, anything else that we've had. So that's really greatly appreciated. In coming to this, and I want to somewhat use the words of Councilman Joyner, and rightfully so, and that is that in good times, you don't just jump right out there and do everything, because what becomes good oftentimes starts to slow down. So you don't want to spend everything in the barn and have nothing to go when times get tough. However, being here for quite some time, this truly is probably the best report in the way of the health of the city that in the decade I've been here. So that's a good news. I would like to kind of pitch the idea that there are a couple of small items in comparison to the amount of revenue that we have in reserve, which is the biggest concern, I think, for a lot of citizens here in Lincoln and for quite some time, is the skate park. We're not talking $1 million project. We're looking at something that will help the youth. The other day, I happened to be going down F Street, and daylight was just about ready to close, but right back behind the Carnegie Library, I counted at least 7 or 8 kids there at skateboards. They're doing what they can do with what's there. So you don't have to look very far to see that our youth want to be busy. They want to do that. And I think it's time and maybe an opportunity to have the city look at that and see what we can do. It doesn't have to be gold plated. It simply needs to be something that they can use and get back to where it was. I think that will calm a lot of things for that. And with that, I think simply looking at some of the needs that we can do, certainly 10%, 20% of whatever that project looks like, or not project, but monies that the city can indeed invest in and make right for the citizens. And they've been waiting a long time for that. So if you could, I think that would be appreciated by everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman, for that. And just so you know, and so the public knows, that we have been working on the skate park project for a long time now. They don't always see what we're doing in the back end. Mr. Scully and I have been already talking about it. Actually, we started conversations in our interview process. And so he's on board. He's already meeting with the public that are working on it. We have a lot of good plans, and we are working on it. It's not something we have forgotten about. We've got some ideas, and we'll be working with the Park and Rec Committee and with the citizens that are interested. And in fact, I've actually stopped several times and talked to the kids who are skateboarding around town and had conversations with them to let them know that, hey, we haven't forgot about you. We are working on it, and they're very excited. So it'll be coming forward pretty short, what the plans are, what the ideas are. So thank you for that. But we are in the works with that. Mr. Scully, did you want to add to that, or?
No, except provided that I could get enough legwork done on it ahead of time, we were thinking about holding a special Parks and Rec Committee meeting this month, in March. And probably the second or third week. And one of the key discussions will be skate park, temporary location, and a variety of options that they can chew on and put a recommendation forward to council. Basically like a two-phase approach, an interim solution, and then if you're going to develop a true professional level, skate park, I'm shocked to say this, but actually it can cost $1 million or more.
I was going to say, it might be $1 million project.
It's sort of, that part's a little depressing, but it's true.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, and when I give you a call, I'll try to get you the information at that meeting.
Okay, any other public comment on this item? No? Okay, bring it back to the council if there's no other, we do need to take a motion on this to receive it, yes, because we are amending the adopted fiscal year 2021-22 budget. So can I have a motion, please?
I am happy to make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Joyner
Yes.
and Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yep.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes.
Shootout for that
I
motion.
know. All right. Okay, item 10C, adopt resolution 2022-46, approving and authorizing the city manager to execute an amended and restated license agreement with the Lincoln Potters Baseball Club LLC, extending the agreement to August 2031 for the use of McBean Stadium and its home baseball field for summer collegiate wood bat baseball, and authorizing a budget appropriation from the general fund unrestricted reserves in the amount of approximately $137,000 for stadium lighting and fencing replacement. And Mr. Scully is going to give us the report on this.
Council, you probably will learn that as the more items I bring forward, I really try to get all of the approvals done in just one approval, so we don't have to bring it back. So sometimes those resolutions are a little long. So real quickly, as certainly the council knows, but if the public doesn't, McBean has hosted countless games and tournaments over the last 70, 80 years. And more recently, in 2016, in fact, the city approved a 10-year license agreement with the Potters. And this deal included lease payments for the use of the field and a revenue sharing component, which I'll touch on later. More recently, in fact, last year, one of the light poles, which are ancient at this point, partially fell into the public right-of-way due to high winds, and they damaged some stadium fencing as well as some safety netting. Since that time, we've become increasingly concerned that is going to be, when one goes down, the other ones, since they're all put up around the same time, probably are. Yeah, getting ready to. And we really don't want to have it fall on anyone. As I told Clifton with the Potters, I'd rather that the players worry about their opponents than getting splattered on the field by stadium lighting. So we want to get the issue addressed immediately. And while we were discussing that, Clifton Taylor brought up that perhaps now is an interesting opportunity for us to amend the agreement to extend their term here and address a few contractual issues that have become a problem. And while at the same time, establishing a capital sort of mini financing plan for addressing this light issue. The total estimated cost to replace the lights with steel post lights, which are modern, by the way. They will limit the amount of light flooding into other areas, which I'm sure the neighborhood will like, is approximately $400,000, $399,000 to be exact. And so the question really is, how could we possibly afford this, given that this is a very kind of low revenue kind of generating facility after cost? Fortunately, the city received a phase 2 grant from, I want to make sure I'm saying this right, the United Auburn Indian Community, and in the amount of $247,000, which I understand we're due to receive the grant paperwork this week if we haven't already. The Lincoln Potters, as part of this extended term agreement, will commit $50,000 to the effort, and the city of Lincoln would pick up $102,000. And then there's a little provision that says anything that's above that estimated budget, the city would split between the Potters and between ourselves. So that's how we're going to take care of the lighting issue. Now, separately, when we had some discussion about the extension of their agreement, it appears that the primary issue that the Potters are having to deal with is that there was a provision that was included for revenue sharing at 3%, or it's an escalated amount. It's now increased to 3% of gross. Why they picked gross, I think we could go back and really talk about that, because it does seem to really, and I'm going to share some numbers which they have said they're okay with me sharing publicly. In 2021, they are going to have gross revenue of approximately, they're representing $551,000. Their net income of that is $12,900. So it's after expenses. They're at a 3% revenue share of gross. They're going to owe the city a little less than $20,000. So after this payment, the Potters are running an operating loss of about $6,300 a year. And you can kind of see that just based on how the business is run, that's probably, they're going to continue to be successful there, but probably not when they're shaving 3, and it goes up to 3.5, and I believe 3 3/4 after this year. So as we kind of thought about it a little bit, the value of having the Potters is not revenue generation. It never has been. I think that the staff at the time probably wanted to just hedge against the possibility that this was some sort of tremendous money-making enterprise, which is not really how it's designed in the first place. The value of having the Potters is community recreation, economic development, driving people into our downtown area. And it's become a brand that now is sort of a synonymous partnership with the city of Lincoln. And so as I thought it through, although I don't ever like to negotiate against the city, it does seem like a worthwhile investment long-term, and you tie up, or at least get a commitment from the Potters that they're going to stick around here for the next nearly 10 years, which I think is well worth it. And if we had more time and this was a much larger deal in terms of revenue, I probably could do a quick study as to show how much they bring in that's not on the books. But I don't think that's necessary. So that's the general detail. I think we might have we do have somebody here this evening too. And the city attorneys looked through the agreement, and we think the amended and restated updated form will work, and hopefully keep them here for a very happy 10 years and also get the lights fixed.
So before we come to the council, Matt or Kate, would you like to share or speak? We'll just jump to you first and then come on up.
Good evening, Mayor Andrietta, council members. It's so nice to see everyone in person.
See
Kate
you.
Hart with Taylor Builders, the Potters, Mountainside Builders, all kinds of different entities. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for considering this. Mostly just want to say thank you so much. The Potters love being here. We love being part of this community, and we are very grateful to staff, both to Christine and to your new and fabulous city manager, Sean Scully, for helping us push this forward and get through. We definitely do not want anyone hurt by lights. And it'll actually make the stadium, I think, look really fantastic and reduce light shed like your city manager indicated. So we're just here to answer questions if anybody has any. And we're really happy to be here and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Matt, would you like to share?
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? Sean, welcome to Lincoln. Great to see everybody, but I don't really have anything to say other than thank you guys for reviewing this, and happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Matt, were you the one chuckling in the back of the room when we said it wasn't a huge money-making machine?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check.
Yeah. Right, awesome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
Yeah. So we'll let you guys make comments, but I'm really, really excited and I really appreciate Sean jumping on this right away. I mean, his plate is already full. He's only been here a few weeks and between him and Christine getting this done with the Potters, really appreciate it. I mean, I spend the summer out there, well, the last few summers, and especially this last summer. And it is true that the one new light that we have, the technology is great. It shines down and then it comes right back on instead of like taking forever and after they turn the lights off. But all the other ones are leaning. It is very scary. It is very dangerous. The fencing around there does need to be replaced. And my thought has always been that, and I feel the same way about William Jessup using the field too, is that they are true partners of Lincoln. And what Sean said, the community, that the community feeling and just how much fun everybody has over the summer. And I know that there were teams that came from up north and they came and stayed for a week and because they played series, and these families eat and shop in Lincoln. They were here like all week long, and that happened all summer long. And so you're right when you say that, you know, there's revenue that comes into the town that's not on the books directly from the Potters. And people come here and they're like, wow, this is a great town. We love it. We went looking around. And so having the Potters here not only is a benefit economically in the community, it's also just such a community builder. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to get emotional. I know I'm a crier, you know, I'll cry. But coming out of COVID this last summer, because the year before you guys shut down early, right? You had to quit. And so this last summer, I'm going to tell you what, after the first game or two, when they finished and they let the kids run out on the field, and they do that every game, but the first couple weeks, I mean, I'm sitting there like just in the stands just bawling because the kids are having so much fun and they look up to these players, and they're outside and they're running around and they have dreams of playing. And it's just like, I love this place. And so I really appreciate what you were doing here. And I appreciate you guys because this town is, sorry, it's not professional for the mayor to cry, really, but this town is a beacon to Placer County of what people want when they come here. And I watch Clifton and Isabel and Matt and their staff, like they bust their buns every day of the week. They play every day except for Monday, and they're there and they're busting their buns. And yeah, they want the team to be successful, but it's really about the community. And so I'm super excited for this. I hope you guys will all support it because it's onward and upward. And that's kind of how I feel about it. So I'll pass it off to you. And I apologize for getting emotional. I just can't help it.
That's all right, Madam Mayor. So, you know, we all refer to Lincoln as America's hometown, and the Potters are a huge part of creating the environment that allows us to call it that. A lot of new folks refer to us as Mayberry, and I can live with that. That is exactly what we are, is a small town, despite the fact that we're growing, and entities like the Potters and the ability for all of us to get out and enjoy the evening together is a big part of that. One thing I do want to do, we are often remiss in thanking the United Auburn Indian community for their contributions, and they are extensive, to our community. We take that for granted all too often. I don't ever want to do that again. And so I truly want to take this moment to thank them for a $250,000 donation that will make this upgrade possible. This is a facility that the city owns. It is right that we should be investing in it, but I don't know that we could have done the full lift on this, and without them, this might not be happening.
I don't like baseball. Not my favorite sport, but I love going to the Potters games just because of the sense of community. My granddaughter, likes running down. She doesn't watch the game either. She runs down.
Likes
and
running the
plays.
field.
Right. And there's an additional thing that hasn't been mentioned, and the new lighting will support the Jessup team and allow them to have more intensive tournaments, as I understand it. So it's a win-win. And you're right, the whole thing couldn't have happened from day one without the United Auburn Indians, because they supported the initial redo of the park. So.
And the shade structure as well, I believe.
Which makes a huge difference. It changed the whole thing. out
With
there.
bathrooms.
The bathroom is nice too, yeah. Councilmember
Okay.
Lawson.
I do like baseball. And I have to, the Potters are definitely an asset to this community. They're more than just the receipts, and I just love, that they're here.
Councilmember Sahai.
Yeah, first I'll just echo Paul and Dan and everyone else on the contributions from the tribe. It's very significant, and I do think that we take it for granted, and we shouldn't. But I think we also sometimes take for granted, and it hasn't necessarily always been the case. Like, there's two paradigms that we could be looking at this line item on, right? There's the, okay, well, what's our overall fund balance and nickel and diming it, and can we afford it? And no, we can't. And I appreciate that staff didn't bring forward this from that lens, because I think we'd be having a different discussion. But I also appreciate that the Potters don't run their organization from that. You're family friendly, you're community centric. And that's not what every private enterprise would choose to be. And to echo, or to, I guess, double down on Sean's point, it is the sense of community. It is a community builder. It is something that I see as becoming foundational to some economic development opportunities, to quality of life, to the type of residents that come here. Last summer, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I dropped my kids off because I have a little one and he can only stay up late so many days before everybody hates themselves, right? He was like 4.5. So I'll let him go to like one game, out of, every 2 weeks or something. But my other ones want to be there all the time. No one else that I know, literally, that doesn't live here is like, sure, I'll drop a 9 and a 12-year-old off at whatever time the game starts. They got cell phones. And I'm like, have fun. I'll be there, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. And people are like, their jaws like on the ground. But this is what the Potters have done. And Lincoln has done. It is Mayberry. It is, I can drop my kids off because I know I'll probably know 50 people who are there. They know my kids. It's safe. People are looking out for them. It's family friendly. It's not an environment that has you worried for, what kind of activities are happening there, who's there, what's going to be tolerated there. Everyone looks out for each other. That doesn't happen on accident. That's curated. And so I just wanted to thank the Potters for curating that in our community. And then also the residents for being the type of people who show up for each other. So I think that we get, I don't know, tenfold back on this investment than we could ever possibly give. And I just appreciate your willingness to help us form something that is really special and kind of archaic. It's like a throwback to the 1950s, and I think we all want to live there. Well, at least in that aspect. Baseball.
Thank you. Yeah, Alyssa and I've talked several times about how I sit there and I watch kids run around because it's safe and
Usually mine.
well, yeah.
And they get yelled at by everyone else there, and I appreciate
But
that
there's tons
also.
of kids that run around and we know nothing's going to happen to them because it's safe. And I appreciate that too. I do have a couple more comments I want to make, and then we'll do public comment for this. Referring to the United Auburn Indian community, I couldn't agree with you more. And I have been grieved over the last couple years that the relationship has kind of broken down between them and the city. And was it 2 weeks ago, Sean? Sean and I met with Howard, their lead attorney, and Jerome Encinas. And we sat down and we had a really great meeting, and very happy to report that relationship is back on track and moving forward, very positive. And I told them, and I'll say this in public, I told them that regardless of whatever, and we're grateful for the contributions from the past and now, but I said, regardless of whatever you do or don't do for Lincoln, we are neighbors and we want to have a good relationship with you. You're not going anywhere. We're certainly not going anywhere. And I value their Native American history and their right to be there. And, and we talk about, we deal with, any issues that arise, law enforcement and all that, but just as a people and as the right to be there, I told them, I said, as a history teacher, I know the history and I understand and I value. And so setting aside any financial things, what they do or don't do, our goal is to have a good relationship. And I think that was received well. And so it's been super positive going forward. And I'm not saying like, oh, I fixed it. I'm just saying that Sean and I took the time and he came and met with us. And so very, very positive about that. And moving forward, I'm very excited about just the friendship and the relationship between us and the tribal council and the people out at Thunder Valley. So I agree with you with that 100%. Couple questions. Well, one question and one statement. And maybe Matt, maybe you can speak to this because I don't know if you guys talked about this, but last summer we talked about the maintenance issues. And I know that our staff was down and all that in the contract. And I don't remember if I saw it. Are we still handling the maintenance of the fields, or were you guys going to take that over like we talked about, or we have that handled?
I don't think that's been
Okay.
amended.
Okay.
It's continuing how it's been.
Okay. So maybe you guys can talk about that because maintaining the field out there has also been an issue. And I know that Scott has been on top of it and Scott Boyne does a great job, but I'd like to see maybe that get handled so that the field is ready to go and we're not having the weeds grow up in the outfield like it did last summer and, guys tripping over holes and stuff.
Yeah, this new agreement gives us the opportunity to sort of restart that.
Yeah. Okay, good.
We'll get-
And the other thing I wanted to say is I would also like commitment from the city. And I know I realize if things come up that we have to talk about it, but I don't want to see the fireworks. How many fireworks nights do you have?
Outside of 4th
Fourth.
of July, we have 4.
Okay. I would like the city to just fully support that. I don't mean financially, but support it as in it's just a couple nights a year. They give notice. I know sometimes people call and complain and I'm sympathetic to that, but last year, a couple of their nights were canceled like last minute. I don't want to see that. That's just my personal thing. And you guys can feel free to speak to that. But the people love the fireworks nights. They get a lot of attendance on fireworks nights. And so unless there's some other issue that we don't know about regarding one of the fireworks nights, I'd like it just to be on the books. Everybody knows it's happening. And for the Potters not to get a notice last minute, sorry, you can't because 5 people called and complained. So if there's a real legitimate reason, yes, let's talk about it. But, and I don't know, Chief Alves, if you wanted to speak to that.
So I know some of the issues with the fireworks happened as Chief Lee was going out and as I was coming in, and a lot of them were fire related issues. So those are a bit out of our control when the wind is blowing wrong and things like that. But
Yes.
that's, as far as complaints go, we've never called,
Yeah.
we've never ordered them to cease due to complaints. But it comes down to fire code and hazard issues. It's just, and as we all know, McBean is just a really tough place to do fireworks. And every year the requirements for distance expand, it seems. So
That's completely understandable. Wind, all of that. That's one of the things that happens and everybody understands that. I just think that there were some other internal staff issues and some conflict last year, and I want to make sure we don't have that. Fire mitigation is one thing, right? And you guys can deal with that. So
What I think that I would be really willing to commit to is better communication.
better communication, yes.
Because I
Yes.
think that all of us
Yes.
should anticipate that it's going to be a roaring fire season, and you'll
Yes,
probably have a
yes.
fireworks show canceled because the sky will probably be black again for the third or fourth year in a row. We can't control that, but we can control how we communicate that out to you, how we plan for it, how we anticipate it. I mean, now we're a few years into this, like maybe we just have those types of protocols and constant communication. But aside from those sorts of things, right? Like, I don't think any of us would ever cancel a show because
Agreed,
someone
but I'm going to
complained.
jump in real quick. We are way off the agenda item and discussing things that we probably
Okay.
should not be discussing.
Well, we were talking about the Potter, so okay.
But
You're right.
This
you're
is a
right.
Well,
light
but this is
system.
something that could be
But this
in an
is-
agreement
yes.
of moving forward.
Okay.
It's slightly peripheral, but
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. All
I
right.
think we'll take it as staff direction.
Understood.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You guys,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comment besides our people from the Potters? Okay, Mr. Chapman.
Once again, Byron Chapman. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I couldn't guarantee, I couldn't say it any better. Everything that somebody has mentioned tonight on the council as well as any others, it truly is, it's a draw. You know, maybe other than Councilmember Carlskin here, I have yet to meet anybody else other than him that doesn't like baseball in some form or fashion. He did mention something about his granddaughter, but we'll have to talk to her individually. In addition to the issue of the budgets and that sort of thing, there is unfortunately one issue that does come up, and it addresses unfortunately the ADA issue. Back on January the 24th, 2017, in this building, Mayor Gilbert and our current city manager at that time, Powers, they had approved, and the council approved, a little over a $1 million work that had taken place out at the baseball field. And my complaint at that time, and it became somewhat of a heated issue on one side, that not $1 of that $1 million was spent on an ADA issue. Nothing, not even so much as painting the parking lot. That had a really bad rub with me. I shared with it. At that point in time, let's just say the mayor kind of got overzealous, and that's the way that went. What I would like to say is that I would love to be out there at the park like all of you. In fact, I was out there at the park for 2 or 3 years. But when I finally made my objections known to the city, in that not everybody can come and join the baseball. In the center section of that arena, there is no way you can get a wheelchair in that center section. Steps, period, done. I've talked about it and I've mentioned it, but I think what happens is people look at it from the city standpoint and you go, wow, we're going to have to put brick and mortar in here and it's going to cost us $4 or $5 million at least. That doesn't have to happen. If you've ever been to a stadium, here, for example, the high schools, the stadiums are made of aluminum. They're not brick and mortar. They're very easy to construct and not a lot has to happen, and they have plenty of room in order for the slope. I've done all my homework on this. So I'm letting you know, I haven't been to a Potters game since that time. And it's my way of simply saying, you know, if others can't enjoy the park that are disabled and others still do, I think you need to recall that it's not open to all of the public. It isn't. I have heard somebody say to the point that in front of it, you can sit there in a wheelchair. You can't go up to the top. So with that, I would hope that the Lincoln Potters, Jessup University, and Placer Travel all know that it is a business venture. And I do not want to take legal action against them, but it is a situation that I may have to, and I don't want to. I've told the city this before. I can meet with anybody they want to, but we need to go down this road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. I know you and I have spoken about that before, and that there are many people who are in wheelchairs that come because there's ramps on the sides. So your contention is that because the middle one doesn't have it, is that? Okay,
How many ADA accessible spots are there in that arena, in that field? They're some of the best seats in the house, I'll tell you that right now.
they're very good seats. I think it's.
I don't know off the top.
What
of
is
my
it,
head.
Matt? It's like 4 on each side, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yep. Okay. Any other public comment? No? Okay. All right, then, and if there's nothing else from the council, then I will be very happy to accept a motion to adopt resolution 2022-46.
Dan doesn't like baseball, so I'll make the motion.
Roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Stillhigh, Councilmember Carl Skint,
How tempting it is. Yes, because it's a community event.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes, I like baseball, so.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to council initiated business. I wanted to just jump in here really quickly and circle back around to the topic of having a welcome reception for Sean. I know when he first was coming on, we decided to wait through February, so the Omicron surge can drop. And so I wanted to just kind of put that out there, and maybe Gwen can start sending out dates and we can pick something for that. So I know he's going to be all humble over there, but we need to do a big reception for Sean.
I'd like to do an in Beerman's Plaza, somewhere outside, and a lot of people would be able to come and not feel weird about coming, and it's so cute
I
anyway.
think that would be great. Yeah.
Dan doesn't want to have to
Well,
come, is what I
the
just
season
heard.
doesn't start
He was
till the
looking
end of
for an
May, so
excuse.
We don't want to wait that long. Yeah. And then I also did want to just say one more time, and then I'll let you guys do your information items or your council initiated business. I just wanted to, I thanked Gwen earlier, but I also want to thank Jen Brown for this amazing setup, and the sound is great and the monitors are great. And thank you guys very much. And a lot of work that went into making this possible. And I know our public really appreciates the Zoom option, but there's no echo and we sound nice and loud. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Joyner, council initiated business.
I do have one. And it's this, when we were at the PCWA meeting this morning, Councilmember Lawrence and Sean, part of what PCWA does is run a few powerhouses. And it was mentioned, and we've heard this before, but for some reason it really hit home this time, that the cost of energy has doubled and is being projected to double again within the next year. The cost of energy was discussed at being about, during the summer, about $500 for a 2,500 square foot home, and that will double within the next year or so. That really caused me to revisit our earlier discussions about the possibility or exploring the possibility of annexing in to SMUD or to Roseville Electric. I know that I have heard monitoring some conversations at some meetings in Rockland that they too are beginning to have those conversations. I think there is an opportunity to potentially float a bond to pay for the infrastructure that would be needed in the eventuality that we could be annexed in to bring that energy to Rockland and to Lincoln. So I guess what I'm asking for is perhaps in our 2x2x2s as they come up, and I don't know how soon that's going to happen. It's supposed to be quarterly. Did you guys continue those during COVID or were they stopped entirely? You
Oh,
don't
no,
know?
we did them, but not very. I'm trying to remember. I think we did like 2 in-persons. But during COVID, the city managers were in constant communication and me and Krista and Jill were in constant communication. So I think a lot of it happened that kind of thing.
So I guess what I'm asking.
A lot of
is-
issues have been spoken of, including that.
Okay.
So
I guess what I'm asking for is council support to reopen those conversations and explore them further.
I'd like to double down on that. And could we do some sort of like work study or like, do we know that it's been a while since we've looked into it. And last time we looked into it, there was an end of the road there because I think that we were asking different questions too. We were looking at more options than just that. So I'd love to explore it with SMUD and with Roseville and to see the viability.
The city did have a consultant
Right.
that we retained to do an analysis of what all would be involved were we to annex into either of
Yeah.
those utilities. And so I think that would be very easy to bring back, revive,
Good.
and
And
reapproach.
I think where the change has happened, one of the changes
Correct.
is that SMUD is apparently building an 1,100 acre solar
They
field
are,
with a
yeah.
battery field in South Placer County.
Yeah.
Which would bring, and even though that energy will go, I
Outside.
believe, outside
It
of our
would.
county, it's enough energy for 80,000 homes.
It also brings our infrastructure somewhat closer to us.
That's exactly what it does. It brings the
Because
infrastructure
that was
much
the issue.
closer.
I was gonna say, I think that because last time, if I know we're getting a little too into it, but last time, if I recall, there was like a direct end of the, well, yeah, that's not gonna work. But I think that there's been some changes that it might be different to at least reopen it. I'd support your request to bring back.
Councilmember Carlos Kent, any council initiated business? Nope. Councilmember Lordson?
No.
Councilmember
So
Taylor?
I do. I'm going to continue to beat the drum of our homelessness ad hoc working group, task force, whatever it's called. Like I said, last time, we had requested along with many of our colleagues in other municipalities to actually have one more meeting to discuss that draft final document. That's happening Thursday. And then it would be ready conceivably for prime time and for councils to start being able to meet. I actually would really like to agendize this as an information item for council to discuss before we have anyone come to present to us. Paul, or Councilmember Joyner and I have now, been involved in however many meetings there was over the last, 4 months. And then we took a tour separately of the proposed Campus for Hope site the other day. They are separate issues. Also, they're not separate issues because they're all seeking to solve our homelessness problem in the region. And I just feel like the two of us are holding on to a lot of background and conversations and nuggets that the rest of the council is not privy to. And then if we have someone come to present to us, they're not going to have some of the history. And we are, by virtue of the Brown Act, constrained from really sharing that aside from when I run my mouth at council information items. So if the rest of you are interested in that, I think that it would be useful to just maybe have an information item for us to just kind of report out, talk. I don't know what it would look like, but I think that it would be useful as a prep.
I'm obviously very interested in that.
As
My
opposed to
question
baseball.
is, my question is that would we have a chance to, not their presentation,
The
but
documents, correct.
look at the report
Yep.
in preparation for your meeting?
Yeah, I think that
insist.
I would insist
I
that
would
you
be in
can.
favor of
I
it.
also think it should be in final form by then because conceivably that's what we're doing on Thursday. It was going to be pushed on us before then and all of us said, whoa, pump the brakes a little bit. We want one more time to talk about it together. So it should be in final form so that you can have that and then we'll really be able to talk. And I also think there's it could be a 2-part item also, because there's the whole proposal for Campus of Hope. And I just think that there are conversations we're all being asked to meet. They're separate things, but really the nexus of it is homelessness in Placer County, in South Placer, and in Lincoln. And while they're all the same thing, they're also different because the answer to all of them is going to be more and more complex. But also I think we've all probably noticed that there's more and more homelessness in our direct region. And so we want to be solutions oriented, and I think we want to do it where we all have access to equitable information.
Dan, did you go out and look at the site this last week? Because I know I did too, and so did Bill, and I had Sean go out there. Did you go out and look at it?
No, I had briefings
Okay,
down.
Okay.
I
So
didn't go
they're
to the site.
separate, but I think
Yeah,
that
right.
at this point, it'd be nice if we just had an item that just said, homelessness
Just,
solutions.
so we don't go too far down the rabbit hole. If, so what we could do is, as soon as a publicly available draft is finalized, that we're allowed, that circulate, we could just put an information item, it'll be your one attachment, right? And then we'll let the two council members that have been involved sort of lead the discussion.
Well, I
Is
think
that
it should
kinda
be
what
more
you're
than that though, because I think that coming forward, there's going to be all of these considerations and we all have independently also met and have been briefed on this, big thick packet for Campus of Hope. And then there's things that we've discussed in the past with Ms. Mollenkopf about our own homelessness solutions. And so I really just think that it'd be useful for us to just go over, here's the county's solution, here's this nonprofit solution, here's the city, and just maybe like get our facts straight. What is actually happening? What's out there? So that when we do have someone coming to propose solutions to us, we're looking at it with a big lens. And also, I think it gives our community an opportunity to not have it be like, feel like they're being surprise attacked with something. Like,
Okay.
we'll have multiple opportunities to discuss it.
So I think I also want to say before we wrap this up, and we need to quickly, the report that will come forward is not the county's solution. It is, if anything, a list of discussed options.
Potential options. Correct.
Nothing more than that. And it's intended from the county's perspective to start the conversation.
Yes, but this is why we need to discuss it, so that we can have a conversation.
We'll put that on the agenda. if that
Understood
works.
and direction taken.
Thank you. Okay. Item 12, information items. Paul, information?
Not at this late hour, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I've got COVID brain, so things drift away on me.
Nope. Councilor Lordson?
No.
Ma'am. And I really quickly before I adjourn, Chief Alva, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that I wasn't saying that the fire department or the police like just willy-nilly canceled. That wasn't my intent. So I appreciate you
Didn't
making
take it
sure
that
we're
way.
all safe. Yeah. Okay, good. All right.
So as an information item, I want to point out something that we've never seen before. Chief
You didn't
Alves.
have one.
I didn't have one until she reminded me.
Your time's up, Paul.
Take a
Your
look at
time's
Chief
up.
Alves' uniform. He's
I
wearing a
love it.
fire patch on one
Yes.
shoulder
It's awesome.
and PD's patch on the other as our public safety chief.
Yes.
I think that's very appropriate.
It is appropriate. It's great.
So.
Okay.
Well done.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. 7:55, we are adjourned and I still do not have my gavel.
So the other thing I want to point out is that Sean is at the ground running and he is acting as though he has been here for a year.
I
He
know
is
it. Oh, yes.
knowledgeable, capable of all
Amazing.
that's going on. And I can say that while he's not looking.
I know.